listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans, and how are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. I am your host, Tom Ernest. On today's show, we are going to talk about the upcoming cuts for the Miami Dolphins and some hard decisions they have to make. We're also going to talk about the wide receiver depth currently on the team and why it has turned into a weakness 2 weeks before the season begins. And also, we're going to talk about Chris Grier and what he should do with the plethora of draft picks he has available to him prior to the final cut down period. Before we get into anything, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Miami Hurricanes, Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. And if you're not in South Florida, no worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you, international fans too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com. All right. Also, I guess before we get going, shout out to everyone listening at finheaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet, as well as everyone listening over at the Facebook group I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, please be sure to go check out the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook group. All right, let's dive into it. We're going to start with the upcoming cuts and hard decisions the Miami Dolphins have to make when it comes to their current depth chart. Now, obviously a lot can change. Even after they get down to the 53, that may not be the final 53. There is the waiver process that the teams have to go through, and there are going to be some guys that could be cut that are initially kept. Now, couple of the positions for me, and it's been talked about before, so we won't dwell and spend a lot of time here on it. But the Miami Dolphins, they have some tough decisions to make. In the first one, first position in particular is going to be the cornerback room, and it's been a good summer for a lot of these guys. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Javon Holland. We haven't seen any of Jordan Poyer. We haven't seen much of Jaylen Ramsey, so on and so forth. And obviously the injuries to Cam Smith have been noticed, and they have a lot of depth here in the cornerback room. But what can they do to keep this group intact? Now, they have a lot of veteran players. Marcus May is there. Elijah Campbell is there. Saron Neal from Buffalo from last year is there. Nick Needham is there. They have a lot of good players. We saw a lot from Patrick Morris. He's going to be put on IR. I would bet quite a bit of money that he's going to end up on injured reserve before the cut down happens, because that is a 6th-round draft pick that, to me, seems like he could be a developing player and may make the loss of Javon Holland next offseason if it comes to that. Obviously, I'm not wanting Javon Holland gone, but if it comes to that, we have a guy in Patrick McMorris who could potentially fill that role for Javon Holland. We saw good play from Storm Duck, Jason Maitre, Mark Perry, and Isaiah Johnson. So these are all players that came in undrafted, outside of McMorrin, undrafted, and had a very good summer. So where's the hard decisions? Well, again, it's a veteran group. The Dolphins are the second oldest team in the NFL, and it's hard to cut these guys, these vets that have seen it all, done a lot, whether it's special teams or play a role on defense from the teams they played for in the past. It's going to be very difficult to slide certain guys in. But, clearly Kendall Fuller, Jordan Poyer, Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey, Kader Kohou. To me, Cam Smith is untouchable. He's a second-round draft pick that you invested in. He's not going anywhere. I think Ethan Bonner is also a guy that had a very good summer that the Dolphins really like, and likely he will make the 53 this year. So that leaves to me 2 to 3 spots in the secondary. Nick Needham. I like him. I know our, one of the guys that contributes to Dolphins Talk, Jason Sarney, he's a big Nick Needham believer. I like Nick Needham a lot too. To me, he could be expendable. I know Jason's not going to want to hear that. I think he could be expendable, given his injury history over the last few years. Didn't really play up to snuff when he came back from that Achilles tear. Obviously, he could be much better this year, and he's got some versatility. He's showing as a nickelback. He can play safety. They have been cross-training him this summer. But wouldn't you think a guy like, offhand, Isaiah Johnson, the kid has a lot of length. He's got speed. Even if he's waived, I think he's shown enough on tape that a team could be intrigued by him. Now, to put him on the 53, that's going to be a little tougher. I think the Dolphins are going to want to keep Isaiah Johnson over Storm Duck and Jason Maitre and Mark Perry, in my opinion. Although, again, all those guys have played great, but they have very tough decisions here to go on here in the secondary, and that's going to be very interesting to watch over the next few days. Now, when you look at the cuts the Dolphins have done since Friday, they've made 3 moves. They cut Mike White, which Mike Oliva for weeks alluded to loser leaves town match, and it was clear that Mike White was the loser of that competition on Friday against the Bucs. Skylar Thompson played better. It's not saying a whole heck of a lot in comparison to what Mike White performed here in the preseason. He was not good. They also said goodbye to tight end Jody Fortson, which was expected. He did not have a good summer. There was a lot of promise. There was a lot of hope that he could provide that size and speed in the red zone, but he fell out of favor. And the last move was Anthony Schwartz, wide receiver for the Dolphins, was put on injured reserve, and he is done for 2024. I think the Dolphins made that move because they probably want to bring him back next summer. I think there's some returnability there, and in a pinch, can he be like a wide receiver 5? Sure, but I think they like his ability as a returner than anything else. So we'll see how that plays out. The next position that has some tough decisions is going to be the wide receiver room. Why is it tough decisions? Because there's really nobody there. If I'm being blunt, there's really nobody left here in the room. Odell Beckham Jr. Is still on PUP. To be determined. Mike McDaniel at his press conference today stated that he's not putting a timetable on Odell Beckham Jr. He is not worried about it. And when McDaniel mentioned the players who are going on PUP, like Isaiah Wynn and Bradley Chubb and Cameron Good starting the year on PUP, Odell Beckham Jr.'s name did not come up. What does that mean? Well, nothing right now because he's still on PUP. But they could activate him off PUP to the 53-man roster during cutdown or just before cutdown period start and have him start, light work in practice. Tua and Odell have not been in any practices together. There's no, the communication has to be there. So I think it's going to take some time for Odell and Tua to get on the same page, but there could be a chance that Odell plays. So what is left at wide receiver? Well, River Craycraft is definitely starting on PUP. He's going to be out for based on what it could be, nothing is for sure because, again, the Dolphins are very vague with injuries, but River Craycraft could be missing the first 4 weeks, bare minimum 4 weeks, but he could see an extended period of time that he misses. So Braxton Berrios is going to survive. Cuts, unbelievable. If you could think about it, Eric Uzakama, who was in a walking boot, reportedly was out of the walking boot after the game and seems to be fine. We'll see if he's going to be practicing throughout the week, leading up to week 1, because when you look at it right now on paper, he is going to be your wide receiver 3 to open this season. Malik Washington, he's going nowhere. I think his special teams prowess returning, he had 2 big returns against Tampa on Friday in the last preseason game, and he's got some decent hands as a wide receiver. Obviously, he led the country in receptions at Virginia. So there is your 4 or 5 wide receiver unit. Now, will they keep 5 or go to 6? I think they stick at 5. If Odell is off PUP, obviously he's on the active roster. And they can use Jonnu Smith as a tight end if need be, or as a wide receiver, I should say. You're not keeping Mike Harley Jr. Braylon Sanders is a practice squad guy. He has been since he's come into the league. Kyrick McGowan, I haven't seen much. And Jaylen Janke, again, not really seeing a lot. Which now leads me to my next topic. Should Chris Grier make an attempt to trade for a position of need? Well, you may be asking yourself, Tom, what's the positions of need for the Miami Dolphins right now? Well, I started at wide receiver. Guarantee that's on the radar. Offensive line depth is terrible. Clearly terrible. They might need to upgrade there. Running back, they're fine. Fullback, they're fine. Defensive tackle needs work. Benito Jones hasn't practiced much all summer. Brandon Peely is okay. He is not severely injured. How many defensive linemen do they keep? Can they upgrade the unit? Time will tell. Defensive backfield, I think they're fine. I don't think you need to add any sort of depth there. And obviously running back, you have no worries there. What can Chris Grier pull the trigger on? Well, I'm going to start where I was a little bit more concerned with wide receiver depth. I think there could be a target out there for wide receiver. Now, again, not many teams have made cuts at this point. I think everybody is going to start waiting for a period of time as we approach the deadline for cuts this week. You're going to see a flurry of moves. I think there's a lot of trade talks going on behind the scenes. Chris Grier and the Dolphins have 7 draft picks to use. Now, the 3 compensatory picks, as we've talked about on previous shows, not available at this point. That will be available when the draft season rolls around. So the Dolphins, once they're awarded those, they'll pick up 3 draft picks, 2 thirds, and a 7th. And right now on paper, they have a first, a second, I believe a 4th. I'm doing this off the top of my head, folks. A 4th, 5th, and 3 7ths. They have 7 draft picks. They need to package something up with a 7th round draft pick, maybe a player with the pick, and get a starting caliber wide receiver. Now, the Houston Texans, as of Monday, John Mechie is on the block. There's tons of calls out to the Texans for John Mechie, former Alabama wide receiver. He's had some injury woes at the start of his career, and he's just shuffled out in Houston after Nico Collins, Tank Dell, the trade for Stephon Diggs. There is not many passes to go around there. Dalton Schultz is there. Joe Mixon out of the backfield. So they are open to trading John Mechie. He was a 2nd round draft pick. He's got a few years left on his contract. Not adding a ton of money to wherever he is potentially traded. It's a low risk, high reward move. What does John Mechie bring to the table, you ask? Well, what does the Miami Dolphins not lack? That would be speed. John Mechie is a speed guy. If you can add another element of speed to this offense, defenses will have a very difficult time figuring out what they want to do with all the speed on the field. So I think number one, and that's a name I'm throwing out there. I'm not saying that the Dolphins are just strictly going to pursue a guy like John Mechie, but you have to inquire about it. It is not going to cost you a lot to go grab John Mechie from Houston. Again, he's not going to cost you a ton on the draft cap. And the cap at this point doesn't matter. When they cut Mike White, they picked up $3.5 million, leaving $1.7 million of dead money. You've got a lot of cap space in the top 51 to make these moves. Again, Mechie not going to break the bank. That's a player you should target. The other player that's out there that was mentioned was Hunter Renfrow, who has not even signed with anybody this offseason. Not even a camp invite. So I don't know what's going on there, but Hunter Renfrow is a name that populated as well. Dolphins could also look at the New York Giants for potential trade. I know they have slim pickings at wide receiver, but I would assume that one guy might be available. Darius Slayton's a name that popped up in my head. He could be available. Who else? Who else could be out there for the Dolphins that they could look at? I can't think of it. Juju Smith-Schuster was signed by the Chiefs, so he's off the table. But you have to make a move for the room, especially if you don't want to rush Odell Beckham Jr. back into the field. You got to pick somebody else up because you can't go in with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, who currently are banged up themselves. You have serious lack of depth. You have big problems. You got to bring a healthy name in, and fingers are crossed that Chris Grier makes a move, at least for wide receiver. Now, the offensive line, Aaron Brewer, Mike McDaniel said he is progressing fine. He's not overly concerned. Brewer's name was not mentioned as a PUP candidate, so it seems like he could be ready to go for week 1. Now, what's behind that? It's just a whole bunch of, pardon my French, it's a whole bunch of shit, okay? Teron Armstead is the glue that holds this thing together. He's on lockdown. You don't have to worry about the left tackle spot. I think Patrick Paul's shown enough where he could be called upon in spot duty. Not that I want him to play a ton of games this year because he's very raw talent, but very athletic, very big. He can move some people around. Not worried about left tackle. Behind Robert Jones is Matthew Jones. They're not related. I don't know who Matthew Jones is. Jack Driscoll's now showing on the depth chart as the backup center. He should not be the backup center. Liam Eichenberg, as much as we crap on him, he's got better versatility. He played center for quite a few games last year. He should be the backup center. Jack Driscoll should be a guy starting at right guard. Still not feasible. And then you got Lester Cotton. Chasen Hines. I think there's enough there with Chasen Hines that you want him on the practice squad. You got Andrew Meyer, who's there as a center as well. He's not me. He's going to be a guy that's going to get cut. So then Kendall Lamb and Austin Jackson and Kendall Lamb. Right tackle, left tackle, perfectly fine. The interior of the offensive line, they need to find someone. Now, what you're going to find in the trade market right now is not anybody of significance. But again, if there's a veteran that has been outplayed by a younger player who came in, that player will be on the block. Now, offhand, nothing has been said, nothing's been talked about, but you have to bring in a viable left guard, right guard, or center. If the Dolphins don't want these guys starting, which all likelihood they don't want those guys starting because they truly believe in the guys they have. I know. They drink their own Kool-Aid. As fans, we're not drinking the Kool-Aid. We see the problem. If Tua Tagovailoa says, hey, brah, I'm getting the ball out fast, when asked about the interior offensive line, that's a problem. You're not giving the quarterback any time at all, and Tua has to get rid of the ball fast. And he can't progress through his progressions when he only has 2.3 seconds of pocket time before it completely collapses on him. And the collapses always come from the inside. It's not often you see Teron Armstead letting up pressures. Austin Jackson's improved immensely, and he's got the right side locked down. It's always up the middle. So if Aaron Brewer comes back, hopefully his pass protection is better than his snapping. Robert Jones, he's a good run blocker, pass blocking, a little sus. And then, between Jack Driscoll, Liam Eichenberg, oh boy. Please make a move for depth. There's nobody on this offensive line behind the starters, for the most part on the interior, that can provide what this offense needs to work to perfection. Last spot is the defensive line. Again, Benito Jones has not practiced very much. Brandon Peely is his backup. Will he start the year? Probably. You have Jonathan Harris. You have Deshaun Hand. I don't know if you're keeping Leonard Payne. He's a practice squad candidate. Neville Gallimore looked okay at times. Might not be here. Isaiah Mack, I think, has played the best out of the tier 3 guys at the position. I don't know if he makes it. Might be a guy they want to keep on the practice squad. Does Jonathan Harris make it? A lot of question marks. What do you do with a lot of question marks? Improve the room. You have 7 available draft picks. Find someone on the interior defensive line. So you don't have to play Calais Campbell more than he needs to play. You want that guy as fresh as possible at the end of the season. Forgot to mention linebacker Anthony Walker Jr. I don't know what's going on with him. He might be an IR candidate. He hasn't practiced in 3 weeks. So what do you do in that position? Daquan Jackson, Curtis Bolton. Does Duke Riley? Duke Riley's on the team. Special teams guy, has played a lot of spot starts over the years. Mike McDaniel likes him. Does Quentin Bell make the move to the onto the active roster? Do they keep Channing Tyndall? I don't know. Look in the market. Maybe find somebody. Find someone for depth. It's not going to cost you a lot. Send a 2026 7th round pick for a guy that might be released that could be used on special teams and also play in dire needs on defense. It's going to be a very interesting week. Very interesting. We'll have all the cuts here at Dolphins Talk. Go to the website, DolphinsTalk.com. We'll most likely have an article updated with each and every cut as they happen. Working our way down to the 53-man roster. Oh, and before I actually finish this up, one thing that really caught my attention on Monday was the NFL reverted back their policy on the third-string quarterback can be on practice squad and be elevated multiple times, no limit, to be the backup emergency third-string quarterback. It is reverted back where the emergency quarterback has to be on the 53-man roster. Cannot be a practice squad guy. Once you have that practice squad guy come up 3 times, he has to be signed to the active roster anyways. So teams may do that regardless. They'll protect the quarterback on the practice squad. So if the Dolphins decide, hey, we're going to bring back Mike White, pennies, 10 cents on the dollar, he could be the emergency third because he's been here. I wouldn't say understand the system, but he's been in the system. So he has some semblance. So if something happens to any of the quarterbacks above, he could slide right in, and it's pennies on the dollar. I know that's not what a lot of Dolphins fans want to hear, but that is potential. I just thought of that before I was getting ready to sign off. So, again, everyone go to DolphinsTalk.com each and every day for all the latest Miami Dolphins news and information. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as we have multitude of shows happening this week. Tuesday night, Jason and Marissa will be back talking Dolphins football. Wednesday, Mike and Ian on the I call it the Super Show on Wednesday with those two guys. We got the same old Dolphin show, Josh and Aaron. Aaron has come up to Josh in Central New York, so those boys might be in the same room doing a podcast. So be sure to again, subscribe to the channel. And then we are inching away day by day, getting closer to the regular season. And because we're getting closer to the regular season, the Dolphins Talk Roundtable Show featuring Mike Oliva, myself, Big E, and the boys at the Same Old Dolphin Show will be on September 4th, the day before the regular season begins, to give you our Miami Dolphin season predictions and records, as we're going to dive in to give our final thoughts. And if you're a longtime listener, you know I do not give predictions after the schedule is released. I am a person that waits till the very end, which we're doing the day before the regular season. But be sure to, again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, so when we go live, you will be able to join us in the chat. And also, one last thing, have you joined DolphinsTalk.com Extra? And if you haven't, why haven't you? All the cast of characters are in the Discord. Patreon, we've got some additional shows. We have the chat in the Discord group, multitude of topics, not just Dolphins football. We're talking, there's soccer, there's other professional sports that we talk about. We talk about other football teams in the different conferences. Be sure, it's $3 a month. And then if you want to be the super patron, it's $5. You'll get some additional content and additional things. Again, DolphinsTalk.com Extra, Patreon. Look it up. Join us. We're having a lot of fun in there. And we hope to see you there soon. I am out. I appreciate everyone listening.
Thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. Be sure to visit DolphinsTalk.com every day for all of your latest Miami Dolphins news.